Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for SMA's Virtual Career Forum AeroDef Manufacturing Satellite Session. I have the privilege of introducing today's webinar, The Next Wave in Aerospace Manufacturing. I want to cover a few housekeeping items before we get started. If you have questions or comments regarding webinar functionality, please use the chat feature inside the webinar page. To submit technical questions to our panel by using the Q&A box. We will be keeping an eye on them throughout the event, and we'll try to address as many as possible. Google Chrome is the preferred browser for a more reliable experience. If you have any technical issues and are using a different browser, try closing your browser and rejoining with Chrome. Also, we are recording this presentation. It will be available on the AeroDef manufacturing website after the event for you to listen again or to share with your colleagues. And now I'd like to introduce Dan Braley, who is moderating the panel and will introduce the panelists. Dan Braley is the Associate Technical Fellow, Additive Manufacturing Technical Focal and Initiatives Lead at Boeing Global Services. Dan is a Boeing Associate Technical Fellow and the Boeing Global Services Additive Manufacturing Technical Focal and Initiatives Leader. This includes sustainment of all Boeing military, commercial, and derivative aircraft platforms through the use of additive manufacturing. Dan has greater than 15 years of aerospace program and R&D experience in composites, electromagnetic product management, materials and process engineering, composites, and manufacturing technology development. Dan currently holds 17 patents with many more pending. He received his BS and MS in mechanical engineering from Florida State University and an MS in engineering management from Drexel University. Welcome, Dan, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Susie, for that introduction. It's an honor to be here, and I am very glad to be here to talk and help emerging professionals with lessons learned and really learn about some of the experiences that we have been through that may be able to help you in your career. And with that, I would like to now move into introducing our panel. So the first is Curtis Lemieux. Curtis Lemieux holds a bachelor's degree in material science and engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology, obtained in 2013, and a master's degree in systems engineering from Penn State University, obtained in 2017. Curtis is an applications engineer in the Lockheed Martin Manufacturing Technology Group in Fort Worth, Texas, which identifies, researches, and develops new technologies to be integrated into the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter production line. Curtis has focused on robotics and automation, particularly automating the manufacturing process at the task level. So Curtis, thank you for joining us. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pose a question to each one of you as I introduce you. And so would you be able to elaborate a bit on one main piece of advice that you have for young professionals that are now joining the workforce?
Thanks, Dan. Absolutely. I think the biggest thing to me that's been the most helpful is not being afraid to ask for help. Working for Lockheed Martin on the F-35 program, the manufacturing it's all down to the details. And to be quite honest, the details for the whole aircraft get overwhelming at times. So knowing when you need to bring in someone else who has the ability to help guide you in the right direction, I think is a pretty critical skill to have.
Well, thank you for that. Appreciate it. So we'll move on to the next panelist. Our next panelist is Rick Opezano. Rick is the founder and CEO of Delta Bravo, an AI company whose technology reduces the time and cost to deploy machine learning and artificial intelligence capabilities. Delta Bravo has enabled industry leaders like Rolls-Royce, Toyota, AccuWeather, and the U.S. Department of Defense to turn raw data into ROI driving machine learning and AI capability. Rick was featured on A&E's American Entrepreneur Series, and in November 2018, he appeared on the cover of Smart Manufacturing Magazine's AI Innovation issue. He was also named to M&A Advisor's National Top 40 Under 40 Technology Executives in 2014. Rick, thank you for joining us, and I'd like to ask you the same question. Can you elaborate on a bit on one main piece of advice that you have for young professionals that are not just now joining the workforce?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to probably answer this question a little differently. Can you hear me okay, Dan?
Sure can.
Awesome. So I guess, when I first started, obviously what we're talking about here is some fairly heavy analysis skills, math skills. And when I first came out, the bloom was kind of off the rose for me with math because I didn't really have a very straightforward way of seeing its application in a way that made me happy or that I found that interesting. When I think about math, I would think about mathematicians or think tanks or stuff like that. And really, what we have today with data science and machine learning and AI is math in 3D. You mentioned some of the names of the companies we work with. I mean, we do cool stuff with math. I mean, we're doing things like predicting traffic accidents in major cities to help emergency responders put police and ambulances in the right place to save lives. We're helping AccuWeather predict the weather more accurately. We're working with Department of Defense to help protect our soldiers across the on other sides of the world. So when you think about all the applications here, for me personally, I just feel like it's one of those things. It's just an exciting opportunity to take math into the real world and actually make an impact in reality in everyday life.
Very interesting. Thanks again for that. So we'll move on to the next panelist. Okay. So our next panelist is Michael Ripperger. Michael is a research engineer at Southwest Research Institute in San Antonio, Texas. Michael has worked at SWRI, designing and deploying advanced robotic systems for government and commercial clients. His professional experience includes software development in the fields of robot path planning, 3D perception, and manufacturing process development. He is currently the lead developer on the A5, Advanced Automation for Agile Aerospace Applications program, which provides advanced robotics capabilities for aircraft sustainment through the use of open source tools. Thanks again for joining us, Michael. And how about you as well? Give us one piece of advice that for the young professionals that are now joining our workforce.
Yeah. Thanks for the intro, Dan. So I guess my piece of advice would probably be just to take every possible opportunity that you get, kind of regardless of what you're interested in it. So for me, I've had my background is more in mechanical engineering, and I had some opportunities to start doing more software development, and that was something at the time I was like kind of partially interested in, but didn't really know for sure. And I took the opportunity, and now I mostly do software development and really enjoy it. So at least for me, there have been a lot of opportunities like that where it's like, I might be interested in it, but it'd be pretty easy to kind of just pass those by. But I've started trying to take more of those opportunities, and a lot of them have been really rewarding. So I think that would be my piece of advice.
Great. All right. So we'll move on to our the next panelist, and last but not least, is Tara Thomason. Tara is a technical fellow at Lockheed Martin Aeronautics Company in Fort Worth, Texas. She graduated from Missouri University of Science and Technology with a degree in chemistry with an emphasis in polymers and coating science. She is currently honored in the February issue of SME's Smart Manufacturing magazine as one of 20 women making their mark in aerospace and defense. Tara, thank you for joining us. And how about you as well? Give us, what would be your number one piece of advice for the young professionals?
My advice would be very similar to the others. Focus on learning as much as you can about your business. Even outside of the technology area, it's really, really important. If you can learn about the finance side, the supply chain management side, even the human resource side, it gives you a different perspective about how your business is being ran and more informed decisions. Again, it may not just be about some design that you're making, but it may be about how funding's coming in, and it'll give you a better perspective on how decisions are made at the higher levels, and make you have an appreciation for those types of decisions that are being made in the background but still have an effect on you. It's critical, and also when you ask those questions to leaders, they understand that you really care about the work you're doing and you want to make the best decisions possible going forward.
I could not agree more. That is actually one of the main things that I've advised a lot of the young professionals that I work with as well. It is a great benefit to know more than just what you really want to know. It will help you,
exactly.
And it helps the company. So yeah, that's a really good point. And from this, we have these 4 wonderful representatives for our panel here, and what I would like to do now is kind of open this up to questions to the panel. And so again, to those that are out there, listening and watching this, please do pose questions in the Q&A and in the chat window, and from there we can try and answer some of your questions. I'll start off, and what I wanted to do is just ask the panel in general, what aspects from your college years do you apply to your daily activities at work? Anybody want to take that first?
Who's going to start with day drinking? Who's going to go
there? Hopefully that's not the answer.
Little room for comedy.
We all need that these days. Absolutely.
We do. COVID has definitely made it an interesting environment for all of us to work. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
But
I'll take a stab at it.
Go ahead, Tara.
We'll get a start. Well, one thing, time management skills is something that you learn in college, especially if you're in a science, math, engineering field, because your classes tend to be a lot harder than some of your classmates who aren't doing those, heavy math and science degrees. Time management, and once you get a job and perhaps start having a family and get more busy, you realize how much time you actually had in college that you just kind of wasted just hanging out with friends and stuff. So you do have an appreciation of, I need to make sure I'm on schedule, understand when my deadlines are, plan ahead of time, because something's always going to pop up. Curtis and I joke about needing to put out fires a lot, and not literal fires. It's just tasks that pop up from leadership. Like I need a chart by the end of the day, and that can completely derail your, plan. But you need to have a plan, or you're never going to get anything. So time management is definitely probably the most important thing I brought with me from college, outside of the chemistry stuff I learned as well.
I'd probably go with kind of just the whole idea of, sometimes, at least when I was in college, I double majored, and there were times where I didn't have anyone to really help me solve a problem. I would get something, and I'd sit there and I'd look at it and I'd go, man, and this is, gosh, I'm dating myself here, but this is, before we had, internet right there and everything at our fingertips. And so for me, I had to kind of just develop this skill and this discipline just to sit down and figure something out. And so, and that's still, to Tara's point, as you get on in your career and as you get on in your life, there's plenty of distractions and there's plenty of, the whole world is fighting for your time, right? And fighting for your attention. And so the ability to just step back and dive deep and solve a problem and just focus and have that discipline, that's something that I really, developed when I was in college that I definitely.
Awesome. Curtis or Michael, would you guys like to chime in, or we can move on to the next question? Whatever.
I think Curtis and Michael probably have the most relevant advice for this one. We got a little recency bias going on.
Michael, I'll go after you, bud.
Yeah, you guys hit a lot of good points there. But I think from the technical perspective, I feel like I use a lot of stuff that I actually learned in college, and I'm working on my master's currently, and I feel like there's a lot of stuff technically that I'm learning now that's actually extremely relevant to my job. I feel like I did quite a few internships too when I was in school, and I always heard like, oh yeah, you just make it through college, you don't really use that stuff anymore. But at least for my job, I feel like I'm using all the math and kind of engineering stuff that I learned pretty much on a daily basis, and then computer science stuff as well. But then kind of like piggybacking on what Rick was saying about kind of being able to dive deep, I agree with that. But I also like to add that just, being able to pull in as many resources as possible. I feel like it's something I learned in college too, right? Like if you didn't understand something, go to the TAs, go to your friends, go to other people, search on the internet. I feel like that's something that's like extremely valuable in my job. If I don't know something, then, I can't just burn lots and lots of money and lots of time trying to figure it out by myself. I need to go talk to other people I know who may not know the answer themselves, but may know where to point me in the right direction or have had some experience in the same way. So it's like, if I kind of struggle with something for a couple hours, I'm starting to think about, okay, well, who can I talk to who's going to point me in the right direction? So
I couldn't agree with that more. Yeah, that's one of those things where the faster you learn that in your career, the more productive you're going to be. And it is so true.
Sure.
I can piggyback off of your answer. Actually, there's a question that has come in of what internships or academic experiences have helped you prepare for your careers today. So, Michael, it sounds like you partially answered that. I'm interested. Any of the other panelists want to answer that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So my internship was kind of a bit different from a manufacturing perspective. I didn't intern at Lockheed Martin. Interned across the way in Dallas at Texas Instruments. So it definitely gave me a different perspective coming to Lockheed from that kind of a semiconductor environment. In particular, I think it was really interesting because I had to coordinate pretty much all of our manufacturing processes with a factory in South Korea. So that in itself gave me a lot of different perspective, having to work through time changes and cultural changes. That's not to say that it wasn't, it wasn't an awesome experience, but it was definitely a bit of a culture shock walking into all these meetings. And it was very, TI on one side and then the South Korean manufacturers on the other side of the table, and having that kind of face-to-face interaction, working through a lot of the manufacturing issues that were coming up on a daily, weekly, monthly basis was definitely a big experience that I carried with me.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And obviously, we were talking about how COVID has genuinely affected every single one of us in this environment right now, and how we work and what we do. One question that has come up in the Q&A now is, do you have any suggestions for how a new engineer can get acclimated to a new company during a work from home environment? I've seen this in our with Boeing within our internships, having virtual internships. I was wondering how it would work. It seemed to work out pretty well. People are adapting. What do you all think?
I feel like there's maybe kind of two sides of it, right? So on the new hire side, I feel like you probably have to be a little bit more outgoing, calling people, sending emails and saying, hey, I'm new. Can you tell me about, what's going on? Can you help me? Can you, give me stuff to work on or something like that? I feel like reaching out a little bit more than maybe you would if you started when you're in person probably would be helpful. But then kind of on the flip side, if you already working at a company and you hiring new people, then it's a little bit on the rest of us too to go reach out to those people and say, hey, I know you're new. Let me tell you about some stuff, or hey, I've got this project that I need some help on. Can you let me get you up to speed? So I think it's more just kind of more outreach, and that's more or less, I feel like, what this whole COVID situation is, right? It's more meetings, more, at least for me, it's kind of more meetings, more checking up with people on a regular basis, catching up with them in the halls or something like that. So.
Anyone else want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, I do think it's kind of interesting, though. Just to raise my hand, I am, millennial Gen Z type. I dread phone calls as much as anybody else on the planet. I get 1,000 spam calls a day. It's exhausting. But to Michael's point, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's having the confidence and the wherewithal to reach out to folks via IM or phone calls or emails saying, hey, I'm new. I don't know what I'm doing. Please help. Like I said, that's kind of was my big takeaway from the COVID stuff so far, is not being afraid to rope in a big crowd to help solve a problem, because a lot of times in manufacturing, our problems are large and complex, and you need so many points of view to solve them properly, to get all the inputs you need and the buy-ins, that having that wide net, not being afraid to reach out if you need it. Like I said, it's definitely been an adjustment for a lot of folks.
Yeah, thanks for that. There's another question that's come in that's a little bit different, and from a good friend of mine, Doug Decker. With the elimination of pensions, there are a few things remaining that can keep employees from jumping ship, by wage hopping. What recommendations do you have for retaining employees, and would you caution employees from wage chasing?
I'd love to take this one.
Sure.
Little background on me. I started my career, 20, 25 years ago as an engineer on a product called Lotus Notes by IBM, and then from there I went into a couple of bigger corporate software design jobs, and then I started my first company in my late 20s. And since then, I've started and sold 3-4 technology companies, software companies. I ran a publicly traded company for a while, sold out of that. And right now, the company that we're in here, Delta Bravo, I started this company with myself. One other, with my partner is our chief technology officer. And so we've grown this thing from the ground up, and I've gone through this process a couple of times. And two things. So number one, when you think about kind of what we do in this discipline. You look at aerospace, you look at, machine learning and AI and these kind of future technologies. Number one, this is cool work. All right. So if someone is wage hopping, going from place to place, there's always going to be someone that's going to come in right behind them. So, so at some level, we kind of caution against that. But I guess really where I'm going with this is that for us personally, we do stock incentives. So we have several different tiers of stock, employee stock options here at Delta Bravo. We also it's kind of a cool thing that no one else does really. We cover our insurance benefits fully. So our employees do not come out a dime for any sort of insurance. That is all covered by the business. So there's little things like that we do. We also encourage passion projects. So we've had a couple of our engineers say, hey, we want to do stuff in healthcare. We want to do I had one engineer that said he wanted to do something in machine learning to help older people in assisted living scenarios. And so we actually ended up doing a project where we started creating models from wearables to help us understand, when people come out of balance, or they'd be at risk for falls and things like that. So, we try to make it fun. Like I said, it's cool work. Try to add those benefits. When I see resumes for folks that are obviously wage chasing, I want nothing to do with those guys. Because honestly, if you don't want to be a part of the team, if this is what it's about for you, again, in the world that we're living in, with the type of work that we do, consistency, the camaraderie, the ability to tell a story with 2 or 3 different people, it's a huge deal. And if you're one of those people that thinks you can just kind of, teleport in and out of that, this isn't really for you. And so when you're building a business like this, you can smell those guys a mile away. So for me personally, I just, I see resumes like that coming all the time. It's like, oh, it's a year here, a year there, a year, 6 months here, 7 months there. I'm like, next. So I don't know, kind of a turn off for me. But like I said, we go out of our way to, to create, because guys got to remember, I got to compete against, big banks. I got to compete against Lockheed, right? I got to compete against Boeing, for the guys that we get. Right, and so and believe me when I tell you, and it's hard to believe, but we don't have as deep pockets as a Lockheed or Boeing. And so ultimately, we've got to be creative in how we handle employees and how we handle the incentives that come along with work here at Delta Bravo.
And Rick, you brought up a good point of, wage hopping is generally discouraged. It is something where if you have the, just 6 months or a year or something like that of experience here and there, you're really not ever really gaining that true amount of experience that you can then transfer to that next job as well. And the only thing that I do want to say, personally from my experience, is that there is, when you look at the Lockheeds and the Boeings and the Northrops and some of the larger companies, we have, the larger companies have a lot of opportunities. And if you're not happy in that opportunity, you can use the experience that you have with that company in another position in that company. And that in itself can really help you in your career. And, in that particular case, I don't necessarily look at that personally as wage hopping. I just wanted to throw that little piece out. Anybody else want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, I put a little spin on it. I also look at it kind of where you're coming from, Dan, is, I've met many people, even within Lockheed, who have been there for, let's say, 7 years and have worked in 5 different groups. And people will look at them and go, okay, did you not like the job, or did the groups not like you, that you're jumping around so much? So, I mean, my advice to someone who's, I want to say, it's almost like they're trying to find themselves. It's, what is your passion that you really want to work on? Because if you're not happy going to work every day, it's really easy to find a new job with a better paycheck because you think that's what's going to motivate you. But if you're doing it a couple times and you still aren't happy, you need to think about the subject matter, the technical area that you're working in, and figure out what that passion is. Because, I will recommend everybody do a little reading on organizational behaviors. Part of it is, how do you motivate your teams? Some people are motivated just by their paycheck. You could tell them to go dig a ditch or tell them to go write code, and as long as they're making the same amount of money, they'll do either one. There's other people who don't care necessarily how much money they're making, as long as they feel fulfilled by the work that they're doing or by the people that they're around. So I just want to make sure the audience understands there's a few different facets that you want to make sure you're thinking of, not just from yourself, but how does your jumping around appear to, like Rick, the potential new employer? Are you flaky? Are you really bad at your job every time? Or are you just trying to find yourself and what that passion is?
And that's a really great point, Tara. I think you make a fantastic point. And if you're really trying to find yourself, a lot of these companies have opportunities for the rotation programs. Get into a rotation program. Try and find yourself. That's okay. And in fact, in a lot of cases, you gain a lot of great experience in doing that. I personally did that, and I recommend it to anybody that has that opportunity. So to pivot a little bit off of this, there's a question on the Q&A. What do you think is in store for commercial aero manufacturing in the next few years?
Well, then this one might be for you, man.
Yeah, I can take this one. You want to take this one, Dan? Yeah, Michael.
Go for it. Go for it, Rick.
From the outside looking in, we take a look at the industry. I think that finding ways to increase operational efficiency and ways to cut down internal production costs in order to increase EBITDA seems to be kind of the number one thing on the menu, at least from the outside looking in. So when we go in and talk to a manufacturer in this space, whether they're doing critical parts or whether they're doing engines, it's all about how can we use the data that we're producing to either have predictive quality, predictive maintenance, find some way here where we can get in front of some of these operational costs that are impacting our bottom line. That's the big thing we see a lot of. But as far as actual development, I think that's more of a question for you guys, right?
Yeah. So go ahead, Michael.
Oh, okay. I was going to say I can jump in real quick with kind of an outsider perspective as well. So working at Southwest Research, we're more kind of contract R&Ds. We're not really producing parts or anything like that. The group that I work in is developing kind of more intelligent automation systems, and so we've been working a lot in aerospace just because there's a big push for more efficiency and cutting costs, and I think robotics is a big part of that. But traditional robotics is just kind of hard to deploy in the scale of components for aerospace, as well as kind of like the throughput, right? So you're working on different parts every day. Maybe the as-built geometry is not the same, so it's just really hard to apply some of these like kind of traditional robotic solutions. And so that's kind of where we see a lot of interest from aerospace clients is like, hey, how can we make robotics easier to deploy? Can we put them on mobile platforms and be able to move them around and have these same robots go and do lots of different tasks? And what can we do to kind of minimize the amount of robotics expertise we need to use these robots to do kind of custom and hard type things? So those are kind of the applications that we're working on at Southwest Research, is trying to kind of make more of those things automated, use vision systems for the robots to kind of perceive what's around them and have them kind of work autonomously without a whole lot of like intensive feedback from an operator. So I feel like that kind of area is going to grow, especially as robots become cheaper, with like the collaborative robotics and all that. And vision systems become cheaper, computing power becomes cheaper, and there are more people out there who are learning how to do this type of stuff, and all these libraries and software that exist out there is just going to continue to grow and get better and better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Robotics is definitely a place, as is AI, Rick. Curtis, it sounded like you had something that you wanted to say in regards to that. Do you wanna chime in here?
Yeah, Dan, I always have something to say. So just first off, that just is what it is. Tar knows me well enough. But actually, about that, I'm going to toot Tar's own horn here, because the two things I see as really impacting the commercial airline manufacturing industry here the next year is the integration of the companies like Delta Bravo and the Sweries. But also something that I know Tar is heavily invested in right now is the Internet of Things and the digital twin. So when we're making airplanes, we're making them right the first time. We're not making something kind of at a conceptual phase. I mean, something cool that I just read about yesterday was the Air Force's new jet that no one knows where it came from. It was just a one-off that got manufactured in under a year. It's that level of rapid
Exactly.
response, and going from a digital just blueprint to something that's flyable in that time frame is just something I think we're all going to have to adjust to the next year and then beyond.
Yeah, I think so it kind of again towards towards Tara's side of the house. I think that in the last like 4 or 5 years is investment in the IoT side of things. The whole idea of saying, hey, let's get the data out. Let's start taking these metrics. There's been such a huge investment in that. That now you're starting to see the fruition of it, right? Where you're saying, okay, well now we're actually doing a lot more rapid prototyping. We're decentralizing manufacturing a little bit more. To your point, Curtis, first pass quality, first time right, stuff like that. You're starting to see that actually happen now.
Exactly. Quality is becoming bigger and bigger. You start from Boeing's perspective. Look at the 737 Max. It has changed the culture. It's not that we didn't. It's not that anybody didn't look at quality as an important thing in the past, but I think it's just got a much larger. A lot more people are looking at it now.
Well, I mean, they've got the data now, right? I mean, so
Exactly.
we got into this 4 years ago, right? And 2016, and having a machine learning conversation in 2016, they're like, "Oh, that sounds cool. Here's our data," and you're looking at it going, "Oh boy, I've got 4 metrics that were collected every 6 hours, and they want me to predict something 30 seconds in advance, right? So there's only so much down sampling I'm going to do on that." When we take a look at just the difference even between 4 years ago versus today, I mean, yeah, they've got the data to do it, right? People like Tara are getting in there and saying, hey, instead of looking at this thing every checking this metric every 2 minutes, we got to collect this 6 times every 2 seconds, right? I mean, so you get to go from half hertz to 10 hertz. There's just a lot of different things going on now. Actually having the kind of, I guess you could say, the natural resources to do this type of work.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, to I guess move on to some more questions. More questions are coming in through the Q&A. What types of skill sets will be in demand 10 years from now? Do you anticipate electric or combustible engine skill set demand leading the way? So I guess, really, any one of you, what do you think are those types of skill sets that are going to be most in demand in 10 years?
Well, I'll take at least a stab at it. Initially, I mean, the work that Rick's group is doing, that is going to be much more pervasive. Everyone that it could even be in a commercial, let's say working for Procter & Gamble even, you're almost going to have citizen data scientists across the company. You're not going to necessarily need a master's degree in data science to be able to look at a lot of data because everything is being connected. It's going to be at everyone's fingertips. So being able to use, I mean, I'll say today, things like Tableau, I mean, those types of tools even are a step above what you would get from Excel, right? Data visualization is very, very important.
Right.
So, from a technical side, absolutely. It doesn't matter what your background is, a chemist, electrical engineer, robots, data analysis, and being a data scientist, even if it's a citizen data scientist, is going to be very important.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, Tara. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, I was going to say, I think all of us would probably agree that no matter in 5, 10, 15 years from now, program management skills are still going to be highly sought after. Being able to interact with different people, understand locating stakeholders for your projects, just that basic program management skill set will always be in demand. I don't know if you guys agree with me on that or not, but
that's a really good point. Generally when we talk about tech industry and stuff like that, we don't bring up program management. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah. So think about it like this. Yeah. So if you look at this and say, let's just say there's a Shangri-La where people all of a sudden starting right now decide to start upgrading and buying equipment that allows them to get better data in the right formats, and they're able to put all this stuff together. So let's assume that we've moved on to this kind of ideal future state. So within that, in that ideal future state 10 years from now, you've got a number of predictive instruments, right? So now you have a number of data coming in from all these different data sources, all of which are relevant for solving a problem. You're able to predict, what's going to happen next. Now it becomes, the idea of saying, well, what happens after that? What do I do with predictive information? And so this is, I think, goes back to Tara's answer, right? Which is, you have to have somebody that has perspective across multiple areas, multiple businesses. Someone that understands, 2 sides of the issue, 3 sides of the issue, 4 sides of the issue, right? And I think that kind of skill, along with, the technical, that would get you there. That's kind of where it's going. We're training a lot of our guys on, hey, listen, you have to learn how to tell a story. You have to seek first to understand. There's all these little pieces that kind of go into that perspective development that I think is going to be pretty important.
No, that's a good answer. Anybody else want to chime in on that before we move on? All right.
A lot of questions on electric stuff here, huh?
Yeah, there are. So I'm gonna turn it over to. It seems like there's a bunch of questions also here in regards to additive manufacturing. So Tara, how do you start a career in additive manufacturing?
Oh gosh, I think it's very different today than it was, Dan, when we probably first got started.
That is so true.
Yeah, I mean, my dad did additive, 30 years ago, back, when it first started. So, I mean, it's been around for a lot longer than a lot of people realize. Today, I mean, a lot of kids in high school, they have MakerBots in their classrooms where they understand slicing programs and all that, whereas that's something I learned after I was already at Lockheed Martin. I would say, from my perspective in additive, it is definitely much more than just understanding what button to push to get the print job to go. Understanding the materials and the mechanics of the materials when you're melting something is very, for example, with metals, you have a powder, you're remelting it, as opposed to if you have a billet of titanium, it's been quality checked and everything's good to go and crystallization's understood and all that. It's different. So really understanding the material mechanics and process is critical, in my opinion, to being successful in additive if you really want to be a subject matter expert on it. As far as getting started, gosh, I mean, you could get started in design and looking at the new generative design tools that are out there from topology generation, those types of things. There's a lot of different aspects. I don't know, Dan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of different aspects. There are a lot of different ways. So to me, what I've told a lot of people to do is to take the classes, in school. See what you like, because there are so many different career paths within additive. Additive is a big area. There everything from composites to polymers to metals to ceramics to you name it. Like you can play in any one of these, and then there's multiple different types of machines associated with it all. And so find what you like, and then from there, try to hone in on that, and maybe get an internship with one of those companies, and try to see whether or not your thoughts of this is where I want it to be are real or not. A lot of the times you'll find out that the answer is no, and in many cases you'll find out that this is where I want to be. This internship is where I want to be, and it'll start your career. And so from that, there's a lot of different answers to this, but that's kind of the approach that I would take. Yeah. Let's see. So, let's see. So, I guess there's another question in regards to AI learning and basically automated manufacturing in general. Is there a particular industry, another industry, whether or not it's the aerospace industry, that's really leading the way for AI learning and manufacturing? What do you guys see as, are there benchmarking efforts to other industry leaders with machine learning? I think Rick, probably largely, reaching out to you here. Maybe.
Yes, this is a.
Go ahead.
Yes, yeah. So all right. Number one, again, context. So we have done, I don't know, 60, 70 of these types of projects over the last couple of years. Clients ranging from financial services to automotive manufacturing, additive manufacturing, aerospace, right? So we see a lot, healthcare, smart cities, right? So we see a lot of this across the board. And so I can tell you right now that when it comes, if the object of the game is to execute an AI scenario with really good data, out of all the industries right now, I would say that manufacturing is number one. just by virtue of the Industry 4.0 push that's been going on for much of the last 7, 8, 9 years. Financial services would probably be number two, and that's driven mostly by the regulatory scenarios, the compliance scenarios that require you to collect massive amounts of data and store it forever. So when you think about machine learning and AI, it's all about having a lot of the right data, right? So we have to have the right data that has to do with an outcome, and then we have to have a good bit of it, right? So when you look at these industries that, by virtue of regulatory or compliance scenarios have been forced to keep data for a long time, those are the ones that tend to have what we need to get started, right? So that's kind of, I would say that, manufacturing, number one, within the subset of manufacturing, I would think like chemical companies, really. So like monomers, polymers, to Tara's point, we do a lot of stuff with metals. Like intermix, chemical prediction, chemical behavior prediction, element behavior prediction, knowing when to take recipes, and say, okay, look at, if you want to, a lot of times we have one customer, for example, that has 400 different products that they make. And every one of these products, different products, is a slight variation on the recipe before it. And so what happens is these guys will, across all these different plants across the world, will attempt to use the same recipe, and then the quality outcome will be a little bit different each time. But again, since these guys have all this data that they've been storing on all this stuff for the last 10 years, we were able to go in there and say, okay, here's a predictive model to tell you when to add what raw material to get you within spec to reduce the amount of passes that you have to take on that batch. So yeah, I hope that helps answer the question. So it's just kind of, I would say that when you think about the industries that are ones that are leading the way here, it's the ones that have been required to collect and keep data for the longest. You on there, Dan? I think someone might have muted. Did technology finally silence Dan? There we go.
Or Dan.
Looks like it.
There you go. All right, let's see. Do we want to?
All right, let's start with the next question. How did you develop your soft skills and continue to develop them for writing, editing proposals, or giving major presentations?
I'll start filming this one. Honestly, back to I think the first question of the panel was something to do with what do you take away from college? The biggest takeaway I had from college was my soft skills, my ability to go out, meet new people, interact with them at different levels, understand where my weaknesses were and where their strengths were. You talk to all my college classmates, they're like, man, Curtis really, he dogged it at this one subject, but he made up for it in this. So you start developing that stuff really early on, but especially once you get into the Lockheeds, the Boeings of the world, like I was saying earlier, where there's just this huge Lockheed Fort Worth is a 15,000 person facility. So being able to interact with everybody in a meaningful way is definitely something you can use to your advantage, and it takes practice. I can tell you, I've rubbed some people the wrong way. Not all the time, but you take it with a grain of salt, and you learn, like, hey, maybe I was a bit too upfront with this person, maybe I was a bit too coy with this person, and eventually you kind of find your own voice almost in that respect, that really lets you speak. You're true to yourself, and you're true to your project, and you're true to your company, and it allows you to communicate that much more effectively and that much more passionately to your customers, your stakeholders, your management, to you guys on the panels today that are listening to me yammer on. It's that kind of stuff that makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, I think I can chime in a little bit too. I think mentorship is also a big part of it, for me at least as well. So even if it's like direct or indirect mentorship, if you see somebody who gives a really good presentation, like in your organization or whatever, for me, it's like, wow, they did a really good job. And I kind of know to myself, like, what they did, and then, go talk to them. And if I'm about to do a presentation, be like, hey, can you look this over and give me your feedback what you think I'm saying. And like Curtis was saying, a lot of it is just practice too. But I think if you have that mentorship aspect, then you can kind of go back to these people whose work that you kind of see as being really good, and then get their feedback directly and kind of ask these same kind of questions to them and say, how did you get to be like this? And for me, like, proposal writing has been a lot like that, where I put something together and then it's like, oh, you kind of missed the point, let's kind of refactor this, and you go give it to a couple other people, and then the end result after a little while is something that's a lot better, and you kind of see what the difference was with what you started off with and what you ended up with. And then kind of, again, with more practice, you get better and better at it. And then kind of being on the giving side of the mentorship too, as well, is really good for people, who were in your position. You say, hey, I made those mistakes too, and it kind of solidifies, that experience for you. So.
Yeah, yep. I think, what I've found is that people will tell you what they want, and people will tell you what they want. I mean, if you just ask, what I find is that when you disconnect, when you don't connect with a crowd or a group or in a presentation, it's because, they were expecting something different. So, so whether that's the pacing of what you presented, or whether it's the content or how you presented it, a presentation that had too many words in the slide instead of pictures, or vice versa, people will tell you what they want. You just have to go ask. So again, back to, I guess I definitely support Curtis and Michael on this one. Just when you think first, hey, listen, what outcome do I want to achieve, and does that outcome line up with the outcome that my audience wants?
Yeah, and to kind of add to that, I still have those moments, Rick, where I think I know what the audience wants, and I present it, and it's not what they were wanting at all. So even though I'm much later in my career than a lot of you in the audience, you still have those moments. Even though I think I'm pretty good at giving presentations and reading the audience, you don't always get it right. So just don't ever get discouraged, because it happens to everyone throughout your career. No one is perfect. And you read the clues, you talk to someone, you find out, okay, what is what they wanted? What was wrong with my message? And you go back and you redo it. So don't ever give up.
I can't agree with that more.
Yeah, I think the concept of ownership is really important in this, right? Mm-hmm. So if you spread the ownership across the stakeholders that you're trying to influence, affect, or communicate with, that will make you more effective. Because when someone feels that they were a part of creating something, they're much more likely to support that, and they're much more likely to have transparency around what it's going to take for that message to be successful. So what I always like to do is, if I have a big presentation with a bunch of chaos, actually I had this happen the other day. So I have a huge tooling company that we're working with. I was doing an executive presentation. I think it's tomorrow or Monday or something. No, there's a lot of them. But ultimately, I was all prepared. I was done with the presentation about a week ago. And so what I did is I called up one of our sponsors in there, one of the executives that we had worked on the project with, and I said, hey, I want to walk through this with you. And then I called up one of his colleagues. Hey, I want to walk through this with you. So I ended up talking to 4 of the 16 people that are going to be on that call. And so I know when that call comes, I've got a minimum of 25% yays on whatever I'm presenting, and then at some level they're going to stand up for each other, and they're going to, and other people are going to support them. So it's just, think about the concept of ownership. That's definitely an important thing, I think.
Very, 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 very important point. Yes. And I apologize, everyone, for the fact of having lost my audio for a minute. Technical issues. We all persevere in the end, right?
They're just mad. It didn't happen to me, dude.
But I'll get it back. I promise. If it pops out again. But to ask, we're coming up towards the end here, but I did want to ask the question of, do you guys see hidden obstacles or roadblocks to your career paths that people really aren't talking about, that you think that should be brought up to the folks that are on the line here, to the next generation of manufacturing engineers? I know it's a tough question, but it's a.
Let you guys take that one.
Thanks.
I got it. Yeah.
Well, I guess something I've learned, and I've learned it the hard way, and I think Curtis, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, is learning how to speak or interact with folks of all different, I guess, backgrounds, parts of the organization, whether it's a mechanic on the floor or a director in leadership, and being able to tailor your message. What I would talk to a mechanic on the floor about a new technology is going to be very, very different than the message I provide to someone in leadership. So a hurdle I see is people not either understanding that they need to learn how to message or have a different narrative for their project, or that they just won't do it because, I've met people who are PhD geniuses and they want to give the technical down in the weeds presentation to everyone, and which is great for some subset of your audience, but some people just want to know how much cost savings are we going to get in reduction in our cycle time. That's what's important to them. So understanding your audience, what Rick was kind of saying, what do they care about, and being able to tailor your message. And sometimes you have several messages in the same presentation, but being able to figure that out is critical for anybody to really advance in their career. I think you will be pigeonholed if you can't figure those types of things out.
I think we all know people that have 20 years of experience doing the same thing over and over again.
Oh, absolutely. And it's the same mistake, and they just not, it's like, you got to learn, you got to adapt, you got to be able to know. Knowing your audience, I think, is one of the most important things when it comes to presentation skills. Adapt your presentation. Always adapt your presentation to whoever it is that you're talking to. Adapt how you're giving that information. I could not agree more.
Market rewards value, you know what I mean? The market rewards value. So you have to really understand what value means, whoever you're talking to. And just ask. I'll come out and
exactly.
I'll just swing it. I'll just ask. I'll just be like, hey, why do you care? What do you care about? How does this create value for you, right?
Yep.
And to that point, I'm a big proponent of there's no such thing as a stupid question. Ask the question. If you're thinking about it, there's probably someone else that is too. If you don't understand it, don't pretend that you do. And just ask, and someone is going to be willing to help you. And let's see. So we're at about one more minute here. Curtis or Michael, do you want to chime in on that last question? And then from there, I don't know if Susie wants to jump on and give any closing remarks or anything.
I do. I'll let Curtis or Michael give their last remarks. If you have something to add, feel free.
Michael,
yeah,
man.
Okay. I guess kind of to y'all's point, I guess maybe a hurdle I might see is that, as we get to have more technology and there's more data available and there's more things to learn, I feel like a roadblock is maybe kind of, understanding more, right? You can't just jump in and know everything. You have to go reach out into a whole lot of different areas to really understand what tools you have available to do a job, and kind of like we were saying earlier, understanding the value. There's going to be a lot more ways of getting towards that value, as we get new technologies. And I think that's something that's going to be challenging in the future, is kind of understanding all the tools you have available and which one's going to be right for the job, and knowing, you're not going to be able to understand all of them. So you're going to have to learn how to find the people who know more about the tools than you do, and kind of be able to summarize all their knowledge into a decision that you can make.
Yeah, I guess just to kind of piggyback on that just a little bit, as you're getting all this new information in, don't be afraid to question the process. It's something that, I know we all try to do every so often. It's well, why are we doing it this way? And the answer is, well, because we always have. Especially as we in this industry are pivoting to a more digital, more, I guess, unstructured approach. to manufacturing more of a kind of almost fly-by-wire type system, don't be afraid to question the status quo. Because maybe you'll find, something that's groundbreaking, some earth-shattering revelation that can really, optimize some kind of a system. So I guess that's the biggest hurdle I would see is, overcoming that, I guess we've always done it this way mentality.
Yes, I think that's a great place to end this. I for one, I think that's where additive manufacturing took off, is the fact of not being afraid to challenge the status quo. And you see the same with robotics and AI and all of these newer technologies. They've come about largely from not challenging or not forgetting that you need to challenge the status quo. And so from that, I really do thank you guys for joining us, and to all of the attendees, thank you. I'd like to now turn it over to Susie to basically give us some final thoughts.
I just want to take the time to thank our panelists, Curtis, Michael, Rick, Tara, and of course, our moderator, Dan. We'd also like to thank all of the attendees who participated on this webinar and provided great questions, input. Please make sure that you join us for our webinar next month. Registration is open for the next panel discussion, Next Generation Automation for Aerospace Composites Manufacturing, October 22nd from 3 to 4. So thanks to all of you once again, and have a great rest of your day.
Yes.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.